Okay, so it's time to do the final shape. As you can see, the two doughs that I had pre-shaped earlier have kind of relaxed down into like a more flat shape, and that's fine. I'm gonna show an example for pre-shaping a oval, also known as a Batard, or a round loaf, also known as a boule. So depending on which type of basket you have, which shape, then you can follow. They're actually pretty similar. You just do a slightly different technique for the round versus the oval. And if your basket doesn't have a liner like these ones, you're gonna wanna probably line it with a tea towel, or you're gonna wanna use quite a bit of flour. These liners really help so the dough doesn't stick, but a tea towel would work just fine too, and then you can actually fold that over the top of the dough when you put it in your fridge for the overnight or the cold proof the next day. So we're going to show those examples. I'll go ahead and do the round or the boule first. So for shaping, I actually use a tiny bit of flour. So I just use a flour shaker and I dust just a very light amount, only because when you're shaping, you don't want your dough to stick. And this just ensures that it won't, because if it sticks or it snags, then it kind of messes with the tension. So you're going to pick your dough up with your bench knife, and you're going to flip it over onto the floured side that you just did, so turning it upside down, and then using your hands kind of stretch it out from the corners just a little bit. I'm going to take this edge that's closest to me, going to fold it up about to the middle, kind of press that in just very gently. You don't want to deflate too many of the bubbles. Then I'm going to take the corners here, I'm going to bring this one into the middle, stick it in there, bring this one, press it so it sticks. Then I'm going to take this top section and I'm going to lift it up and kind of bring it down. I'm going to go back to these corners and bring them in just so they touch. And I'm going to grab just from this kind of flap on each side and bring it to the middle and stick it together. And if your hands are sticking too much, either wipe them off, get them a little bit wet, or you just use a little bit of flour is what I would recommend. So mine are actually sticking a tiny bit. Get a little flour. You don't want it to stick so it doesn't snag and mess up the tension. So then you're gonna take this edge, and you're gonna tuck it, and you're just gonna roll kind of in one motion. And then you're gonna use your bench knife, and you're gonna take it along this bottom edge and gently tuck it under as you're pulling the loaf towards you with your hand. So your hand is like right on this outer edge, and your bench knife is just kind of pulling it against your counter. You don't want to do this too much, because then you risk breaking that tension that you've created on the top, which then would make your loaf kind of open up again and have no structure. So you want to be careful just to do it to the point where you get enough tension. And then if the ends are kind of open, you can just take your fingers and pinch them closed. And then that's it for the oval. I flour the top before I put it into the basket. Even with the towel, I like to do this just to make sure. So you dust it with flour, and then how you actually get it into your bread basket is take one hand on one side, take your bench knife on the other. You're gonna do like one kind of movement. You're gonna stick it under there, lift it up, and then I take two hands like this, kind of clasping it together, and then I just place it right into the bread basket. And then this will get covered and put into the fridge overnight. Or if you're doing the overnight bulk proof, then you would do this part in the morning, and then you can put it in the fridge for a partial cold proof, so for like 4 or so hours. After this rests in the basket for 5 or so minutes, I might go back and do what is called stitching, which is where I would take these edges here where it kind of opened up, and I would just kind of stitch it like you would do when you're sewing, overlapping. You're just grabbing this dough. It works a little bit better when the dough has rested a little bit, but it's actually working right now. So this just kind of gives it that closed bottom, because when you go to bake your dough, you're going to be flipping this out onto your parchment paper and then putting that into the pot to bake. So this would be the bottom. So that can be set aside. Like I said, cover it either with a tea towel, or if you have another kind of cover, even like saran wrap or plastic wrap would work fine. It might stick a little, but it comes off easily. So that's for the oval, the Batard loaf. Now we're gonna do the round boule shape. I'm actually just gonna flour this counter a little bit instead of the loaf itself. Picked it up with my bench knife, flipping it over, I'm going to stretch it out a little bit. We're basically doing the same process here, just a little bit different folding. So taking the bottom, going to bring it to the middle. Then I'm going to take the top, this one, and bring it to the middle like this, overlapping, so you've kind of done like a tri-fold. Then I'm going to take this side, bring that to the middle, and then the same thing on this side. And then I'm going to pinch these sides together. And then for the round shape, what I'm going to do is just flip this whole thing over. You don't want too much flour on the counter for this. And I'm just going to kind of pull it around on the counter till it kind of gets a more round shape. So that same technique that I've kind of been showing you, just use this bench knife kind of as a guide. I'm using about equal pressure with my hand and my bench knife, so I'm not pushing it like crazy. I'm not dragging it hard against the counter, just kind of guiding it. And that helps just gently create the tension. So that's good enough. I go too much more, then you're gonna split the top, like I said with the other one. So that's that. And then once again, a little dusting of flour, spread it around, and then we'll go into the basket. So same thing, under, over, like that, and then right into the basket. And you can do the same similar stitching on this if you want. This is not necessary, but it's just an option. It kind of gives it that tighter top, and then can also just kind of seal the bottom. But if your dough isn't relaxed, it won't stick too well. So you can always wait to do this part or skip it, and then cover again and go into the fridge.